Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this podcast, just to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Isabelle Jackson on the on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from Florida. She's originally from the UK, but I mean that Florida weather. Oh God, I mean we're having nice weather up here in Minnesota, but I don't know what it's like down there in Florida. But she's an IFBB pro physique competitor. She's also a firefighter and a medic. She's coming on to share her health and fitness journey and just basically talk things health and fitness with us. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Isabelle, thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well,
Appreciate it.
I gotta ask first off, what's the weather like in Florida today?
It it is beautiful and sunny, but it's very hot. The heat index is about 105 right now.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's summer's here.
I
It's
mean,
hot.
yeah, being from a climate like Minnesota, I mean, if it gets to be like 80 degrees, that's too much for me. Or like I'm like a low 70s, mid 70s kind of guy. But yeah, I could not. I mean, I went to Florida once for a baseball spring trip, and the humidity is just, you get a sweat before you even walk out of the hotel, basically. You've already got a sweat going on, but it
Yeah.
is a beautiful place. But before we, depress everyone else who's not maybe having the best weather of the day, why don't you give us your backstory on what really inspired and what motivated you to get in shape and how that led to where you're at right now?
I've always been active ever since I was a little kid. I rode horses. I did karate for about 3 years. I did a little bit of running. I just enjoyed anything active. And I don't think there was any particular one thing that led me into bodybuilding. I do remember back in the 80s, I saw like Muscle Magazine and Mia Finnegan was in there and I saw her body and I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to look like that. I thought it was amazing. And so that was one of my first inspirations and then there was another girl, Kelly, and I can't remember her name, but back in the 80s. And the two of them, their bodies were they were amazing. And I wanted to look like that.
Yeah. So when you were getting started, I mean, that was a long time. I mean, just the ever evolving cycle of fitness just changes basically every day. Basically, there's always a new way to work out. But I mean, going from the 80s to now, I mean, I can remember my dad just talking about those old, I forgot it was an old fitness set that he really, really enjoyed. The Nautilus was what was the big thing. Yeah, he's like just talking about from then to now and just seeing how fitness has changed. How has that been just dealing with that ever evolving cycle that, I mean, it's always changing and evolving?
Yeah, there's so much information out there now, and it's so different. You can I think progress so much quicker now because there's just so much more information, so much more equipment, so much more that you can access on the internet, and then everybody has a coach now. And I mean, I didn't have any clue about any of that for a long, long time. I just enjoyed lifting weights and I didn't really know what I was doing, but did it anyway.
I mean, that's why I always say like the most impressive to me are like those strong men from like the 1910s or like the 1800s, where it's like, yeah, what kind of nutrition did they have? What kind of workout routines did they have? That's a lot of it's genetics though. But before we get into that, I mean, I always say for anyone getting started working out, if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to their diet, their nutrition, how many reps they do, what exercises they do. So many little things add up to that overall package that people end up seeing. What was that experience like for you when you were getting started? Because I mean, I always say if you're to walk up to someone and say, "Hey, what'd you train for that body part? It looks amazing." What works best for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you.
True, true. And a lot of times you have to remember that people with genetically phenomenal body parts, it's their genetics. So with a little bit of training, it looks great. The person you need to ask is the person that had terrible back or skinny little legs and managed to build a great physique. Those are the people that you want to pick their brains because they overcame obstacles and managed to build a really good physique. So yeah, you got to do a lot of research and you got to try different things. But you also have to be consistent for a long time to see results.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I always say with people in my generation, but good luck in bodybuilding because that's the one sport where, I mean, you cannot have everything now and you can't have everything yesterday, basically, where, I mean, it takes so much hard work and dedication. And was that something that you think that you possessed when you first got started, or was it something that you sort of picked up as you went along in the sport, sort of that drive and that dedication that you need to have if you want to be successful?
No, I think I had it from the very beginning. I worked with horses, so that taught me at a very very young age to be patient, and especially dressage, which is one of the hardest disciplines within riding. It yeah, it definitely taught me discipline, and that it takes time and it takes years to develop into a good athlete and to develop the horse's skills. So yeah, it I think I've always had that kind of discipline with the sport. I just realized as I progressed further, and once I decided, okay, now I want to get my pro card, or now I want to do this, and then I realized that I can't just do things by myself anymore. I need to start going the extra mile and really giving it 100%, which I didn't before. I never would, I guess, put out, I guess I thought that I could eat fairly clean and lift a little bit and do lots of cardio and do my own hair and makeup and buy a used suit. And I think the biggest thing that made a difference was completely changing my attitude and changing everything.
If I had a nickel for every time we had a guest on here saying that, they thought that they could do everything themselves, I mean, I would be a very rich man just because it's just, yeah, you need help in this sport, especially, I mean, I've suffered too, just like you with the dieting, where you're just like, hey, if I work out a little bit, I can eat whatever I want, and then next thing you know, you've still gained 5 pounds within a month, and you're like, okay, what's going on here? Like, this isn't muscle, basically, and then you realize, oh, hey, maybe having a hamburger, every 3 or 4 days isn't the best thing to do for you. But you brought it up, and I mean, I love to talk genetics. It's probably my favorite question to ask because so many people in this day and age, where I mean, everyone's online, and you look at people's pictures online, and so many people are like, oh my god, I want her arms, I want his back, their abs. They just don't realize that you can only be the best version of yourself. I mean, you don't know how that person got to the way that they're looking at. I mean, you don't know what it took for them. And for a lot of people too, I mean, it's just, you're not going to be built like that, and that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow. But I always say, when you're getting started in the gym, everyone always has that one body part that really really takes off, that they don't have to train as much, and then everyone always has that one body part that just lags behind, that they have to train into oblivion, basically, to get to catch up. I'll give you mine first. I mean, my back, just because I had jobs all throughout college of working in warehouses and lifting and loading packages, you either got a really nice back or you quit. Those are basically the two options that were presented to you. But I mean, I'm 6'3", so my legs and my lower body are just absolutely shot, where I mean, I have to train my legs into oblivion just to get them to look like any semblance like I've ever lifted them a day in my life. I mean, don't even get me started on calves. I always said I could inject pure muscle into my calves and they wouldn't gain an ounce. I mean, luckily, since coronavirus, the gyms have been closed down. Well, I think they just opened up last week, but I still, as soon as I go back to the gyms, I can guarantee I'll still have friends. They'll say, oh, hey, Ryan, you plan on training legs anytime this year? And it's like, you saw me train them yesterday. Come on. So I deal with that all the time. But what were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
um, I I was always very lean because of working a physical job. So I usually had good definition because I was running very lean. And my biggest problem my whole life has been putting on size anywhere. Genetically, the one body part that actually puts on size easily and I gain strength is my chest, which as I started out in figure, and maybe if I'd have been a guy, that would have been awesome. But nobody's like, oh yeah, she won it with her pecs. And so they actually grew. My chest grew to the point where it threw off the balance of my body. So I stopped training it completely for 4 years. I train it again now. I train it obviously again, but yeah, that's the only body part I have that is great in response to weight training. Everything else, I work my butt off. Everything.
Well, the one crappy thing, I guess, with the chest really going really quickly is that every other body part that you train, anything upper body really, I mean, your chest is getting a workout in and of itself. I mean, anytime I train arms, anytime I train anything, the chest will get, like if I'm doing dips or something like that, it's like, yeah, the chest still gets the workout in. So that's hard to sort of like let go of training chest because it's going to get, a little workout in regardless. But yeah, you are the first female guest that we've had on that said that the chest was the first thing to really, really grow. So out of like our 200 female guests, you are the first. So I always say there's a first for everything on this podcast. So I know normally it's like legs and stuff, and then I'm just like, okay, get off my podcast. I don't want to talk to you then if you're gonna just talk about legs and stuff. But yeah, I love bringing that question up because so many people don't understand that it's based on a lot on who you are and just based on your genetics, and some
Yeah,
people
I think a part of it is because I have very narrow shoulders, so my clavicles are very narrow. So I get very thick from front to back versus side to side. And I always struggle to get my delts to kind of pop. And yeah, I don't know, but yeah, it's chest. It's just easy. It's so easy for me.
Hey, I personally would love to have that problem myself, but hey, hey, you get what you're born with. But when you're talking about, it was hard for you to put on muscle and put on size. I mean, that's a struggle that I think a lot of women go through, and a lot of times, I mean, it goes again with the myth that I love to bring up, which we're going to talk about right now. Is I talked about to this about you, right before we started recording, is that there's so many myths and stereotypes, but the number one that I still do with all the time that a lot of our guests do is that, I mean, it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there are still so many women that have that fear that if you walk into the gym and pick up one weight, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And, I always say to that, first of all, give me that type of self-confidence. I would love to be that type of self-confident myself where I'm like, okay, if I just do one thing, I'm going to be that big. I would be a Fortune 500 CEO right now if I had that type of confidence. But did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, I bet you still deal with that all the time. How do you like to respond to that? Because I bet you hear that still.
Um, I I'm still waiting for people to tell me that I'm too big or that they, that I'm looking too manly or something. I'm still waiting for that. I know a lot of women get that and they get a lot of hate because of it. And I have to say, I really don't. So obviously, I'm not big enough yet. But no, I mean, I always remained very lean. So I think that helps because once you start to gain muscle and then you put that layer of fat on it, just your whole body is bigger. But yeah, women generally they're scared of getting too big. But if you lose 10 pounds of fat and you gain 10 pounds of muscle, guess what? Your pants are going to be baggier than the way they are right now, and you won't be any bigger than I am. So
Oh yeah, it's
I'm
something. Well,
just
I gotta
going
add a disclaimer too. If that does happen to you, if you do gain all that, give me a call because I'm more than willing to pay my entire life savings to train with you then. But one thing that I think impacts women so much more positively than men, and this impacts men, greatly too, because it's impacted me too, is just that confidence boost that working out gives you. I mean, we've heard so many stories of women on this podcast who have, been able to make life changing decisions. It's helped them maybe be a little bit more assertive. It just helped them better their overall lives. How has that change impacted you? Because I always say that's the one thing that you can take from the gym and use to impact every single aspect of your life is that confidence boost.
Yeah, that's a hard one for me because I've lifted weights pretty much my entire life. So I don't really know any different. The degree to which I lifted has obviously fluctuated over the years. There have been periods where I was basically just maintaining, but I've always been going to the gym. And I like to push myself out of my comfort zone with um, either bodybuilding or career wise or I think it was definitely a huge boost for me winning my pro card and competing in a pro show and actually not being last. That was a huge boost, huge. And then the fact that I'm glad that, some people, they find out I'm a firefighter and that got into it late in life. And I try to tell people, you can be whatever you want to be. It's just a matter of working to it because I don't have anything anyone else has. I'm just stubborn and I don't give up working for it. So I don't have great genetics. I didn't do everything right for a long time. And I wish I started a lot earlier.
Yeah, trust me, we've had some of those genetic freaks on the podcast, and they just make me hate myself more than anything else. Where I'm just like, you do not realize how much you are blessed with. They could, I mean, I still have a friend to this day where he can eat, 10 Snickers bars a day, and he doesn't gain an ounce of fat, and it's just like, dude, like you don't realize how lucky you are. But I mean, the biggest thing that I think most people do not understand when they look at bodybuilding, or they just look at the health and fitness lifestyle in general, is that nutrition is by far the most important thing. We're talking like 85 to 90% of it. And you were talking about how you struggled to put on weight. What would you say were probably some of the bigger nutritional changes that you had to make when you first got started in this lifestyle?
Well, I bodybuilded for a long time, but I never ate right. Never. And that was probably one of my, the hugest mistakes I made. And then I would still do cardio, and then I worked a physical job. So all I was doing was breaking down my body and never fueling it enough to grow. So eating more food, eating more food and eating the right food and timing it correctly, that that made a huge difference. Huge difference.
What was that like for you? Because I think the normal person, if you tell them like, hey, if you want to lose weight or if you want to slim down or even put on muscle, you're going to need to eat more. A lot of people are like, that doesn't sound right. What was that difficult for you at first to realize, hey, I'm going to need to eat more?
Yeah, yeah. And I really didn't get that until I hired a coach, and they did my whole meal plan for me. I On my own, I probably wouldn't push myself to eat that much food. I would just eat probably till I'm comfortable and stay in this comfort zone. And you got to push yourself outside that comfort zone in order to grow. And that means walking around on off season with more fat and not being comfortable with yourself, because we're all used to competing and being lean and looking good. But it's important to take that time to grow and to feed your body and make sure you can get your calories high, so when you actually diet, that you have something to take away.
I always say the hardest thing for me is those last few bites where you're like, am I going to throw up if I keep eating this? But then you're like, no, I need to eat it, where you're just like, okay, yeah, it just, your stomach is just already full. But then you're like, hey, your body's going to burn all this off because you just ran for 10 miles and lifted for like an hour. So you're going to be fine. But yeah, it's just, yeah, it's really hard for a lot of people to adjust to. But the biggest shock that I got since I started this podcast, I would have never guessed it in a million years. And I don't think the general public would have guessed it in a million years too, is that the hardest thing for so many of these competitors that we have on here is posing. It's harder than you're working out. It's harder than your
Oh,
nutrition. I would have never guessed that in a million years, because it's just one of those things where you're just like, oh, hey, you just flex and that's really, that's it. No, not even close. I mean, I like to compare it now to being a perfect driver, where you can be a great driver. You can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser. You can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your relationship with posing been like?
oh.
We get that reaction every single time.
I hate it. I dread it, and I don't want to do it until I'm lean enough to see what everything looks like, because I feel like it completely changes once you lean down. But by the time you're lean enough to see everything, you're too exhausted and depleted and tired to pose. And it takes so much effort just to drag yourself and take your clothes off. And for me, I am not comfortable doing that in the gym, and I need a yoga room, like closed door. I don't want anyone coming in because I'm still not confident enough with it.
It's
So,
I mean, yeah, it's for a lot of people. I mean, it's like, yeah, the average person, no one would ever willingly go up on a stage and pose in front of people without, the right result. I mean, yeah, it's so hard for so many people. But what was that like going from figure to physique? Because I mean, for anyone out there who's not who doesn't realize, I mean, those are two completely different sets of posing. Where figure, I mean, you're doing just a lot of your turns, and physique is more what people think of when they think of bodybuilding poses. What was that change like for you?
um, funny story. So I loved figure. I always wanted to be a figure competitor, and they, I was working with Shane Hughley, and we were doing Team Universe. I was getting ready to do Team Universe in figure division, and a week before, he was like, "Hey, why don't you try physique?" So a week out from the show, I was like, okay." I was like, I don't know if can even compete in physique because I've never done it before. So I emailed the promoter and I was like, hey, would I be able to cross over? And they said fine. So I had like a week to learn how to pose, which I don't know if you can call it learn posing. It was a mess. Um, and make up a routine and everything. And I ended up getting second place in both those, in figure and in physique. In figure, I did not pose my back correctly. I never could pose it correctly in heels. I don't know. I seem to do better without the shoes on. Um, and then the girl that won in physique, she won multiple classes, so it rolled down and I got my pro card in that. But I actually liked physique more because you could move around, and even though at first it was very stressful because there was so many more poses and so much more to do and you had to make a routine, you just have this freedom to hold your body any way you want to hold it. And with figure, it's very regimented, and I do not look good on the side turns, and then I screw up my back pose. So really the only thing I had was like my front. So somehow it seemed to work. It just worked. I just fell into it. And then when I won my pro card in, and I was like, well, I guess my body chose physique and that's where we're going.
Well, and another positive is that you don't have to wear those heels that you got to wear for figure too. That's another
Oh, they
positive.
hurt your feet so
Oh,
bad. They're
I've heard so
so
many horror
uncomfortable.
stories about that. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, out of your physique poses, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
Uh, Least favorite is definitely the abs and thigh because I can never figure out how to make that look nice ever. And I think most people struggle with that one. It's very hard.
That's
And
our most popular answer by far. It's just such an awkward pose for anyone out there who's
yes,
not familiar.
yes.
Yeah.
I try to copy what they're doing, but it just doesn't work for me. And my favorite pose is actually back double bicep. I like that one because one, I'm not facing the audience.
You don't have to be smiling. Your smile can go down a little bit. You can take a little bit of a breather.
uh, but yeah, I think because my glutes are one of my strong points, and my waist looks small from the back, and yeah, I like it.
Mhm. Yeah. No, and believe me, yeah, abs is by far our most popular answer. And yeah, if they could find a way to mix that up, but yeah, I agree with you too. There's some people that make it look, effortless, and then you're just like, okay, how? Like, I think you just got to be born to be able to do that. You just got to be born a certain way, I guess. But a question that I ask all my guests, whether they be my up and coming bands and musicians or my bodybuilders or health and fitness guests for my bands, I always ask, what is that feeling like when you get to go up on stage and perform live in front of hundreds to thousands of people? That also applies to the bodybuilders that I have on the show. What is that feeling like for you when you get to walk up on that stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months on?
I still get really nervous. It's still very nerve wracking for me, and the way I deal with it is I tell myself that this is what I worked for. This is what I did, all this preparation. I worked for this all year. It's my time to go do my thing and just to do it to the best of my ability for that day. And obviously, each year it gets a little bit better and tweaked, and hopefully it's coming together more each show. And but yeah, I'm still nervous. I'm pretty lucky that when I check my photos and my videos, I manage to always smile, and I think that's one of the most important things. I want to show everybody that yeah, I'm happy to be here. Like I want to have that nice stage presence. I want to be able to look the judges in the eye, and I want to be able to be smiling all the time, even if it's hiding my whole body shaking or something.
No, absolutely. And I mean, my favorite question to ask all the pros that I have on this show is, I mean, what was that experience like when you won your pro card? Because for anyone out there who doesn't realize, for a lot of these athletes, winning their pro card, that is the highlight of their careers, just because that is the affirmation that all of that hard work that they put into the gym has paid off and they can compete in pro shows now. What was that experience like when they called your name and you're just like, oh my God, I'm a pro now?
It was good. I mean, I think because I got second technically, I'm like, okay, it would have been nice to have won it to win it straight out, obviously, but it is what it is. So yeah, it was pretty amazing because that was the first national qualifier that I was doing that year, and I had planned on hitting like three or four of them. I was just like, I'm just going to give it everything this year. And then when I got it at the first show, and that was the first show that I worked with Shane, and so we were both pretty ecstatic with that. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, just to have all that hard work and effort pay off. I mean, I can't imagine what that must feel like. But now we go to a fun question. What is your go-to post-show meal?
Um, I don't have one particular thing. It depends on what I'm craving, and it's there's always chocolate involved. And usually I'm eating the chocolate on the way to the restaurant. But it's usually a cocktail or a glass of wine. Um, Sometimes it's like chicken palm with the marinara sauce, and other times I'll crave like a salad. We'll go to like Cheesecake Factory and get a big salad with chicken and just having full fat dressing on it and a piece of cheesecake at the end. But yeah, I don't have one particular thing. I don't eat red meat, so I'm not a big burger and fries person. Um yeah, definitely chocolate. Chocolate's my big thing.
I mean, I always said I would rent out a Five Guys burgers and fries myself and just be like, "Here, you're feeding me the entire night." But that, I mean, yeah, it's I always find that fascinating. But the second myth and stereotype that I love to bust is because so many people do not realize that that look that you guys put on stage, that is not a sustainable look. You're not going to be able to look that way 24/7, and a lot of people are confused by that because think a lot of times people see shows like Biggest Loser where people go on there and they lose 150 pounds, and some of them are able to keep that weight off. So then a lot of people realize, hey, if these bodybuilders are probably working out even harder than these people losing weight, I mean, they should be able to maintain that look. But that's just so not true because a lot of people don't understand, the ways that you've manipulated your body and the dieting down that you've did. I mean, it's not a sustainable look. What has that been like for you, sort of realizing that, hey, I'm not going to be able to maintain this look 24/7? Has it been hard for you, and has it gotten easier for you to adjust to that as your career has gone on?
Yes, it has gotten easier to adjust to it over time, and very it's very hard rebounding after the show. Um, I think right after the show, when you're rebounding, that your confidence is at its lowest, and then once, like I could weigh 5 pounds more than my stage weight and have lower confidence than I do now, 25 pounds over my stage weight. It takes some time for me to go transition into a full off season and then feel really good about my body in the off season. But honestly, I am so tired and so depleted, and I feel useless at my job when I am that depleted. So I just want to eat until I feel better. Not because I need to like stuff my face or feel better emotionally. I just need my body to feel better to function. So for me, yeah, I need to just have energy again. And it's rough those last few weeks. If you're not feeling like absolute death, you're not ready.
No, that's another thing too that people don't realize. I always said, these bodybuilders are actually at their weakest when they're on that stage, and a lot of people don't understand that. But you brought your job up, and I was going to ask the next question, regardless about that. I mean, you said that you became a firefighter later on in life. What was your journey like becoming a firefighter? How and when did you decide that, hey, that's something that I think I could do?
So I was an X-ray tech for 2 years, and then a CAT scan tech for 6 years. And in the process of that, I got divorced, and then I met my boyfriend, who I've been with for the last 8+ years, who is a firefighter, and he loves his job, and he was the one that kind of talked me into it. But then working in CAT scan in the ER, a lot of firefighters have second jobs as medics in the ER. So I talked to them too, and they knew how much I was into. I was into biking and running and lifting weights, and they knew how active I was. And everybody was like, "Yeah, you should totally do it. It would suit you. It suits your personality." So I decided to go for it, and I worked full time while going to school full time. So that was 2 years that was tough 2 years of kicking my butt. But it paid off, and I got hired, and I love my job. I love it. It's a great job.
So when a lot of people think about firefighters, I mean, they obviously just think about, firefighters fighting fires, but there's a lot more to the job than just that. I mean, a lot of people just think, oh, if there's no fires going on, then what are these people even doing? Are they just like sitting around or whatever? That's definitely not the case. What would you say are probably what some of the other big misconceptions that people have about firefighters? Because for a job that's, I mean, so prestigious and deserves so much respect, a lot of people sometimes are like, oh, if there's no fires, then what's going on there?
um, yeah, I think if you are going off of Chicago fire, that's not quite accurate, especially not for where I am in Florida, in South Florida, because we have hurricanes. A lot of our buildings are newer and are built to hurricane code, so we don't have the old wooden buildings, so we don't get a lot of fire down here. What we do get is a lot of people retiring in Florida. So the medical aspect is huge. So we run a lot of medical calls. Everybody in my department is a firefighter, and then they're either EMT or a medic. So we do both. I know in some areas of the country they're separate, but not for us. So yeah, we run a lot of medical calls, a lot.
Well, being now that we're in the throes of the coronavirus pandemic, what has that been like for you medics out there? Has it been a struggle, or what's the environment like now, especially down there in Florida? Because if anyone wants to know, we're reporting, I mean, I'm talking to her today when, I mean, Florida has just been going up and up and up in its cases, but what's that been like for people down in Florida and for you especially?
Yeah, it's been really weird. It's just a strange year. When it first happened, our call volume actually went down a lot. For about 2 months, the call volume went down. I think a lot of people were very scared to call us because they didn't want to go to the hospital, or they'd call and then they did refuse to go to the hospital because they were scared because they felt like if they went to the hospital, they would get coronavirus. That pretty much stopped now, and I feel like everything's back to normal and they're all just calling. Um, but we've had pretty much every day we get a new policy change or we get new things that we're doing. So, yeah, I mean, every call we're masks, goggles, gloves. We have to decon everything, all of our equipment, our station. Yeah, a lot of different things going on in our department.
I
It's
mean,
been
that's a tough job in and of itself without a pandemic. And we were talking about this before. I mean, obviously, being in great shape is going to help you a lot as a firefighter, but also as a medic as well. Have you seen the advantages to being, a strong person when it comes to maybe some people that you might be working with who might not be, as physically strong as you are?
yeah, I feel like um, definitely being on a small person. I'm only 5'3", so um, being small, you need to kind of make up for not having the leverage of being taller, which helps you as a firefighter. But yeah, being strong. A lot of times I'm picking up people from the floor. You're moving people from awkward positions. So definitely having that strength so you don't ruin your back is huge because every day we're picking people up. Yeah. And then to make it through, training and recruit academy and pulling hose and throwing ladders. Yeah, as strong as you can be, the better. It's definitely helpful.
So as someone like myself who had, like I said, jobs in warehouses where I could not work out after my shift was done because I would just be so tired from that in and of itself, so I had to work out before. Is that similar with you? Because I can imagine, after one of those shifts, your motivation to work out is probably in the gutter. So do you have to work out before your shifts, basically?
I don't work out before my shift. I can't get up that early. Um, I already get up shift days at 5:45,
Ugh.
so 5:40 actually. Um, so yeah, I don't really want to get up any earlier than that. I normally work out on my 2 days off. And then I take off the day that I'm on shift because we work one day and then we're off two. Work 24 hours and then off for 48 hours. So I will leave the station in the morning and usually drink a bunch of pre workout and then go straight to the gym and then come home and eat and then usually take a nap for, depending on how many times I've been up that night, I'll nap probably most of the rest of the day.
Wait. So you're telling me that you will work out after working for 24 straight hours?
Yeah. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, this is off season, so it's different. When I'm prepping for a show, then I'm doing cardio every single day. So I'll do cardio, excuse me, at the gym, at the station, because I need to do it every day, usually, or 6 days a week or whatever. So I'll make sure I do my cardio at the gym. I don't really like working out at the station because of the interruption factor. Sometimes you get interrupted, sometimes you don't, but to be in the middle of a workout and then get interrupted and be gone for an hour or 2 hours or even 20 minutes, it's enough to just cool down. And then you're like, well, now what? Do I start from scratch? Do I pick up where I left off? I mean, I just don't enjoy that at all. So,
I can remember times that I pulled all nighters and then tried to work out the next day, and there's no way that I can do. I mean, I get like probably like a third to maybe half of the workout done. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I have to quit just because I cannot do it. So that is just amazing. But two questions that I love to ask all my health and fitness guests is that there were so many positive things for me when I started working out and getting bigger and stronger. But one of the negative things is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open up a lot of pickle jars or bottled water or anything that's sealed on tight. You're basically the go-to strength person. I mean, I'm at home with my parents during this pandemic just to be there and help them out. I go and get out and get the groceries, and I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and carry in the groceries myself. Has that been a similar experience with you? I mean, not even in your job, because we know that you have to do that for your job, but just in like if you're dressed the way you are right now and you walk outside, have you found that like you're going to get asked maybe to do a lot more favors?
um, not
Oh,
really, not much, but I mean, I have a boyfriend that works out, and they're probably going to ask him before they ask me. But
that's one of the benefits, I guess, because I was going to say being six
yeah,
foot three like myself,
yeah, it's definitely one of those sexist things. I'm going to say that more likely guys are going to get asked to do things than girls.
that's one of the handful of sexist things that I think actually benefits some women in this case. Like, hey, you don't have to get asked to move stuff. So, hey, that's one of the few things that I think we can keep when if we ever eventually start to change things. But yeah, I mean, I always said being 6'3", that's a double edged sword for me because I could have zero muscle at all and just hey, tall guy, come and help this out, come and help us out. So that's something that I deal with all the time. But I mean, we have fit guys on the podcast as well, and just their clothing option struggles are bad enough as it is. But for fit women, I mean, your clothing options are
Oh yeah.
to say limited. That is the biggest understatement of the century. Where I mean, if you have big broad shoulders, dresses aren't going to be your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we have all the time. Where I mean, if you have a small lower body, I mean a big lower body and a small waist, good luck finding jeans that fit for you. What have been some things that you've been able to some little tips and tricks that you've been able to figure out to sort of get the right wardrobe? Because I mean, you also have to have two wardrobes in and of itself too. I mean, your off season wardrobe and your prep wardrobe, basically.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That it's tough. I pretty much everybody knows I pretty much just spend all my money on workout clothes because one, I'm wearing them all the time. Two, they're stretchy and they fit and they're comfortable. And yeah, the clothing thing is it can be a struggle. I guess the good thing about living in Florida is that for the most part, we spend a lot of time in shorts and t-shirt and tank tops. So I found the Freddie jeans, those are very stretchy and I love those and they work for me. That's pretty much all I'm going to buy now. And then dresses, yeah, they have to either be open back or stretchy. They have to be stretchy. They're just stretchy material. Anything fitted is just not going to work. And I have very narrow hips, so you get that poofy on the hip where your hips should be, but I don't have them. So yeah, um, I I tend to buy just cheaper Brazilian stretchy dresses and tops and yeah.
Freddie jeans, yeah, that's one thing that we hear of all the time, and yeah, that's one of those things where it has been helping out a lot of women. But yeah, just the clothing. I mean, I will say the one positive thing though about living in the Midwest, the one thing is that like yeah, you can just wear sweaters and stuff like that, and sweaters fit in all shapes and sizes, and you're gonna be wearing that 7 to 8 months out of the year anyway, so you can hide yourself a little bit. But I mean, I always say bodybuilders, you're basically like mini celebrities when you walk out in public, just because, and especially female bodybuilders, because that is not the norm. Where I mean, you are going to get stares and looks just because it's human nature to just be fascinated about things that you know you don't see as much. So, what has that been like for you, sort of walking out in public and getting all that attention? Because for some people, I mean, it's just a big shock for them. And how have you adjusted to it?
Um, yeah, I think I probably get more comments when I'm competition, close to competition. But I'm not that big. So I'm always one of the smaller girls up on stage. And um, a lot of people will ask me if I'm a CrossFit person. I get asked that all the time. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I just joke and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm a couch potato, and just tell them I never worked out before.
Oh, that's the best. I always tell my guests, I always say that as a response. Be like, hey, do you lift? And it's like, no, never touched a weight in my life. This is just all naturally, and then just make people jealous. But yeah, it's just so fascinating how, you get a lot more people's attention. And it's just, fascinating the reaction that a lot of people get. But if you could change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, if you were given the all knowing power and they said, hey, we made a decision, you can change one thing about this sport and everyone will go along with it, what would be one thing that you'd like to see changed?
Oh, wow. Tough question. I don't know. As far as my division with women's physique, I would like to see a height weight cap, because I think they're pushing all the athletes to get bigger and bigger. And um, I know a lot of women don't agree with the degree of leanness that they're requiring now. I like that personally. I like getting completely conditioned and seeing everything. I love that. But pushing to just be so big to the point where it's, female bodybuilding. I I personally don't ever want to look like a female bodybuilder. Like I said, I started in figure, and if my body fit that division, I would stay in that division, even though they're getting bigger now too. But somehow I just fell into women's physique. But I would love to not have to constantly push myself to be so much, so much bigger.
Yeah, that's one thing that we hear of all the time too. Where yeah, these divisions. I mean, if you were to look at figure 10 years ago as compared to now, it's basically like physique. Basically, and if you were to look at physique, when it first got started, it's basically like figure is right now. I mean, it's always seems to be changing in that more of a direction. But who knows where it's gonna take off from now? But if we were to talk to you a year from now, where would you like to be at in your fitness? Where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding? Or just even in just your overall life too, what are some goals that you'd like to have achieved if we were to talk to you a year from today?
Um, I would say, well, my this was already my goal from last year, but I would like to qualify for the Arnold and eventually qualify for Olympia. I'm just turning 46 actually today. So I think maybe, I've got a couple more years before I probably retire from this sport. So yeah, I definitely want to qualify for Arnold. I want to compete there. And just to qualify for Olympia would be amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Wait. So it's your birthday today?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the first time we've had someone on our guest. So everyone, you can sing "Happy Birthday," but I will not sing it because I have a horrible voice. But happy birthday, Isabel! I mean, we're glad that we were able to get you on our birthday. That's awesome. And 46, you don't look a day over 45. Okay, I'm just. I always say that to my mom. But yeah, and that's great, and we wish you nothing but the best. But how have you been dealing with the coronavirus too with bodybuilding? Were you preparing for a show at all, or were you getting ready to compete at all this year? What was it like this year dealing with this now?
No, I actually didn't have any plans. I last year, after I got done with Tampa, I had my implants exchanged. So I took about 6 weeks off from upper body and was kind of coming back from that. And then I had some stomach issues, and turns out I had SIBO. So then I went through dealing with that and getting that all healed up. And I was finally just starting to get into my off season. And then the corona thing hit, and obviously all the gyms closed down. And I didn't really, I don't have a home gym. I have a couple sets of dumbbells, and that's really it. I was lucky that I could work out at this station. And even though it was limited, I did that for a couple months. And then now I'm having some knee issues. So it's kind of sidetracking me a little bit, and I'm working on it. But I really didn't think that I was realistically going to be able to compete this year because I don't want to get back on stage and look the same way that I did last year. I need to put on some size, and that that just takes time. So, yeah, I'm thinking, maybe the beginning of next year.
Well, and by then, hopefully, they should have like a vaccine or something going on for it so that it can be a lot easier. But before we wrap things up, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Um, I don't know.
Your
Not
boyfriend?
you sure? Hi, Chris. I love you.
Yeah, or a coach or something like that. Yeah, we always hear that, but no, yeah, and that's great. And again, I mean, we wish you nothing but the best of luck, and thank you again so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it, especially on
You're
your birthday
welcome.
too. That's awesome. But yeah, and everyone, go and give her a follow on Instagram. I highly recommend it. Disclaimer: you will get motivated to get off that couch and stop eating all those Twinkies. So I'm just giving you a warning out there. But again, Isabel, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.